Starting again. Upon hearing about my talk, one of my coworkers came up to me and he said, "Clarke, I'm really excited for your talk." And with as absolute much modesty as I could muster, I said, "Oh, really? Tell me what it is you like about hearing me talk." He said, no, I don't actually care about you talking. I'm actually really curious. I don't really know where we are right now, and I also don't really know where we're going. So, state of Solidus, it's just as important for people inside of STEMbolt as it is for the community at large. And it's really easy for us to forget that. It's incredibly easy to have our heads down, paying attention to our stores, paying attention to our problems, our bugs, our shipping, our fulfillment. But we are a giant community of people, and we're all going to place. So hopefully we largely agree with where that place is going, and I want to make sure everyone has an idea of what's coming up. First off, to echo a lot of what Gregor said, thank you so much to the sponsors. Nebulab and Alarm Grid were with us last year as well, and we really appreciate them coming back again. The Magma guys absolutely stepped up in both the number of people, the distance they came from Mexico, and the enthusiasm and effort. I don't know what I did to personally anger them, but they've put a fidget spinner in everyone's grab bag. I am absolutely terrified of coming to work next Monday and seeing everyone trying to spin on one hand and code on the other. So Magma, I apologize, but I enjoy them, of course. Thank you very much to the Rainmaking Loft. I know the location for this is one of the most amazing places I've ever seen. I can't imagine I'm giving a speech next to the Tower of London. I always assumed I'd be on the other side of that if I ever had to talk to a bunch of people. But it's fantastic. Thank you very much to Amanda and Susan, who did most of the organization from our side. They are the driving force behind everything you see that works well from STEMbolt, and we really appreciate their efforts. Thank you to Tal and Lily and Jordan from the Lost My Name side. It's them, they are the reasons we're here in London. At the end of the last SolidusConf, they sat us down and said, "Hey guys, Europe, it's a thing, you can't ignore us. We should be having the next SolidusConf here." We were putting a bunch of effort into the internationalization, localization, and they wanted to show their support both to the local e-commerce community and us as Solidus. And very much thanks to them. And thank you very much to anyone that showed up to the hack days. We had more attendance than I ever would have expected, and there's nothing to me that shows such a nice, healthy community as a bunch of nerds showing up to the middle of London 2 days early to sit down and write code for free. I always appreciate that, and I really do thank you all for coming. So onward, this is a bit about me. If you can't tell, I'm kind of tired of writing these slides for introductions. Oh, sorry. I'm kind of tired of writing these. I don't like having to introduce myself in terms of all the things I think I've done that are cool. I love my 2004 Volkswagen Golf. But if that doesn't sound very impressive, that I am the 25th largest contributor to Solidus, it's because it's really not. There are people around you that have contributed so much more to Solidus than I have, that have done so much to push the platform forward. They watch pull requests, they do issues, they do all these things. I get to talk for a different reason. I get to talk for this man and others like him at STEMbolt. This is, of course, if you can't recognize him because he's tiny on the projector, it's John Hawthorne. And John is our full-time open source Solidus maintainer. I am not super his boss, as nobody else in STEMbolt is. We kind of let him go loose on the code base. We trust everything he does. The track record he has with Solidus is amazing, as is the track record of lots of the STEMbolt folk. And it's through people like them that we get to come here and do these types of things. For those of you that don't recognize what he's around, don't tell anyone. Not until you're safely out of England. This is the TARDIS, and it's the actual set-used TARDIS. When we landed on Saturday, the first thing a bunch of us STEMbolt people did was we took the nerd pilgrimage to Cardiff. And let's pretend I knew that was in Wales. But we took an actual set tour of the Doctor Who set. We got to wander through the TARDIS. We got to take our pictures everywhere. And coincidentally, it was also the last day they were offering set tours. I'm not saying that's one of the reasons we're having SolidusConf right now, but let's just track that up to coincidence. And so this is our third SolidusConf. I can prove this because here's a picture of me from the second SolidusConf showing a picture of me from the first SolidusConf. That's going to be really funny next year. These are events I never thought we'd be able to run to this scale and scope we're doing it right now. When you look around the room and you talk to the people you're working with, the amount of commerce, the innovations in commerce, the effort, time, and experience of these rooms combined are mind-boggling. If we continue the trajectories we're going now, it would be amazing to figure out where we're going to be next year and the size of the stores being represented. And which brings us to the biggest question of all. We're all here. For many of you, this is your first SolidusConf. Who here was here for the last one? And yes, I'm doing the interactive thing. Oh, so that's quite a bit of repeat. Yeah, a lot of familiar faces. And who was here 2 SolidusConfs ago to the super private one that no one was invited to? Still quite a few people. We're going to keep these going. They are too important for us not to do. Because the first thing is, I owe most of you an apology. I've either ignored your pull request, I've submitted a bug to your repository, I'm sure my sarcasm didn't make its way through whatever comment I posted. Maybe you are one of my clients and I owe you lots of apologies. Maybe you're one of my employees and I just owe you infinity apologies. But this is one of the best things for me, is where I can sit down and apologize to everyone at once. Second for me is planning. This is where we lay out the foundations of our future. From the technical point of view, the conversations and discussions we have are what becomes Solidus. It was true back in the days of the spree confs, and it continues to be true now. Even sitting at the speakers dinner, we came up with 6 or 7 ideas by complete accident for ways that could produce very sizable, very reasonable outcomes for the Solidus ecosystem. And it was just by accident while we were eating. It'll extend through in between the talks and through the pub night, but generally this is where we'll lay out our future. And then the last one is the knowledge transfer. There's not a community I know like ours, with so many incredibly open people, all happy to help each other, to talk about the things we did that succeeded, to talk about the things we did that failed. And occasionally we're maybe too open about it, but the value we get out of sharing these experiences and sharing this knowledge is completely full of value, not valueless, the other one. They made me a keynote. I wasn't supposed to do this this time. We had another talk lined up by the person that technically ran the first Solidus store. It was a greenfield project we built 2 years ago. Their COO was supposed to come and talk about where he sees e-commerce is and where he sees e-commerce is going. But they ended up with a surprisingly large amount of success. And they ended up stuck doing another opening of another physical retail location, and they weren't able to make it all the way to London and back in time. So I had to take this over. That's perfectly reasonable. I just write it off as Solidus has an issue with helping people be too successful. Because Solidus has an issue with helping people be too successful. We're going to talk about this more and more as we go through, but it's one of the most important things for us to remember, is that we are the platform that other businesses use. We don't want people to grow past us. We don't want people to think that their success is going to be limited. So we have to always keep this in mind. We have to remember that our stores, our clients, our agencies are always going to succeed, and we need to be there with them. So this is easily the hardest talk I've ever given. It's the one I'm the most nervous for. It was the one I had the most trouble writing because years ago somebody gave me a great piece of advice, and that was know your audience. If you know your audience for your talk, you're going to be more comfortable up front. You're going to be telling people the right things. You're going to be less nervous. And so I took that advice to heart. And for every other talk I've ever given, I just picked myself as the audience. I always wrote a talk for me. I said the things I wanted to hear. I said the jokes I thought were going to be funny. And it was really easy for me to stand up and talk in front of a bunch of people because I didn't really care that you guys were there. This is the first talk that I'm ever giving that is more for the community than it is for me. So I apologize if this either runs way over time, way under time, or I flub a bunch of lines. We'll have to keep it going. So that's kind of the unusually large introduction, a bunch of caveats, which I'm sort of known for. But onward, we're going to talk about the state of Solidus. So This is an interesting concept in that does Solidus have one state? And nobody make any solid jokes, please. I tried for weeks to make that work, and I couldn't get it done. But Solidus is different things to different people. If you are a store that's growing, what you think of Solidus, how you treat it, how you use it, is very different than if you're a new store, which is very different than if you're an agency building stores for other people, and it's different if you're evaluating it, looking to see if you're going to use it. It's almost impossible to capture Solidus as a single state. It's a bunch of contexts for different people. But I figured the best place we could talk about where we are is against our own goals. Now, I'm not expecting anyone to be able to read the text. I expect it to be pretty small, so I'll go through them one at a time. And this is most of what's on the Solidus.io website. This is a list of goals that we published 3 years ago when we first decided to fork Solidus. These were the things we cared about. We wanted open source you could trust, and we defined that as development that was done in the open, using a good PR process, always green builds, taking lots of people's input, giving people time to guide the project. And this has been an absolute smashing success. You have opportunities to contribute, to develop, to steer it, just by sitting there watching the repo, doing as you want. It has been been some of the most positive open source experiences I've had in my 17 years contributing. API stability. Anecdotally, this has been amazing for me over the last 2 days because I got to talk with a bunch of stores I don't normally talk about as they describe their upgrade processes. And generally the consensus is our upgrades are now pretty much under control. Not everything's perfect, but the amount of time and energy that the core team puts in, that everyone that submits a pull request puts in order to keep those APIs stable, they have meaningful, tangible effects on how we're able to use, update, and modify Solidus. And this has been, again, another smashing success. So we're 2 for 2. Easy extensibility. This is not something we can solve overnight. This is a multi-year pursuit for us as we try to make Solidus more extensible, better, while we continue with the debt of what came before us. Generally, though, I've seen lots of the extension points we've put in have been incredibly useful. They've been well adopted, they've been well understood, they've been well used. So again, I'm going to call that one a win. So 3 for 3 is still pretty good on where we were with our original goals. Take the easy path kind of merges into API stability, which is we want people to be able to upgrade Solidus. We want you to trust your upgrades when you do them. We don't want it to be a multi-month, multi-week, maybe programmer exhaustive task. And we've absolutely succeeded at this one as well. At Stembolt, we're only 1 store left on Spree. Most of our stores are now running Solidus, and generally they get upgraded now over the course of afternoons, when it used to take us weeks of scheduling, developing, debugging, QAing. Now I watch devs do it because they're bored and not tell anyone, which is really fantastic for that we can now do that with such confidence. This security thing, I don't know if you guys have seen any of the security announcements. Hopefully not, because there shouldn't have been any. Hawthorne watches this stuff like a hawk and knows it all really well. A bunch of other people we work with know the security end of the Rails dev and the web dev very well. And there hasn't been an open issue for the 1.5 years we've ran the mailing list that was created from us. It's our business too, and that's less of a goal and it was more of a heads up for everyone, and that we care a lot about Solidus. I mean, most of us have now come multi-thousands of miles to the middle of London to talk about it, to help push it forward, to do these things. And I don't think anyone needs to question the commitment we all have to the platform and the amount of investment we've all put into it. So we succeeded at these goals. We succeeded at what we set out to do when we forked Solidus 3 years ago. The problem was they were written 3 years ago. I don't know if you remember where you were 3 years ago, if you remember what kind of programmer you were, or you remember what kind of store you were. But times change, and we're in a field that changes incredibly quickly. While they're still amazingly relevant, they're not the full picture, and we missed a bunch of important things. Stembolt was half the size. Back then we had 15, 14, 16 people, most of those still developers, but as doubling as a company since then gives you an incredible amount of perspective on what it takes to, what we need to do to keep this platform pushing forward. Solidus didn't even exist. We wrote these goals before we made Solidus. These were the reasons why we were forking. These were the things we had to do in order to solve the problems we were experiencing back then. But we didn't have the perspective having ran Solidus. We didn't have the community we have now. And we were only really looking after ourselves. We forked Spree for notoriously selfish reasons. We had to. We needed a platform we could trust. We needed a platform we could run. We needed something we could count on to be stable, to be successful, and keep pushing all of our stores and all of our efforts forward. And we didn't really care about the rest of the community back then. It was something we had to do to keep our lives sane. Success. Astounding success. I, back then, would never have expected us to move as far forward as we did, achieve all the things we set out to achieve to the degree we did. And there's no part of this talk is going to take away from that. And TE helped reinforce how well we did some of these. I have numbers, and some of them unfortunately got spoiled during Gregor's opening remark, but I have my favorite number is this one right now, and that number is 20. If I were a different person, I would ask people for guesses as to what that 20 meant. But I'm just going to tell you because I'm too excited about it. It's too cool for me. And it is the number of pull requests we merged over the last 2 days during the hack days. And this is the merged pull requests. It doesn't count the 20 we have open that are quite likely to be merged in the next couple of days, but that we can put volunteers together in a room where they could be exploring a city they maybe have never been to, but instead want to all hang out together and push the platform forward. That's the best number that came from this. I was personally expecting not nearly that. And if you go through the complexity and importance of some of these PRs, they're not trivial. These are the types of things that are pushing the platform forward. For those of you that weren't lucky enough to make it here in time or weren't around yesterday, that's roughly what hack days look like. This was, I believe, 10 a.m. on Monday. We'd opened the doors for less than an hour, and this place had started to fill up with people claiming spots and opening laptops. I can't emphasize enough how much this shows how well we're doing as a community. 1,094. This is the 1,094 people that are hanging out inside of the Solidus Slack channel. I don't always know how they end up there. And no, they're not always there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But we've had 1,094 people interested enough in the platform that found us through who even knows what avenues and connected to our Slack to ask questions, to offer help. And the quality of discussion keeps going up. Every week, I'm able to read through our logs. I'm able to see the questions people are asking. And the quality bar of the conversations is going up. The number of people that are capable of contributing to the conversations are going up. And this is another awesomely robust sign that we're running a pretty nifty thing here. 1965. Is a good one for me because it's the number of pull requests / issues we've had in Solidus the last 3 years. I mean, nobody wants to see, hey, you've had 1,900 issues, but this is a great sign. It's engagement, it's interaction, it's the direction, how we're moving forward, how we're doing things well. Most projects will never get a number anywhere near that. I've seen many actual like corporate internal stores not get anywhere near that, and we've had that in just like the 3 years we've been running Solidus. 148%. This is a really important one to me because it's how much grayer my hair has gotten since I forked Solidus. There's a lot of the amount of stores pushing through, the amount of volume, money, the amount of bug snags, the amount of pager duties, and all those things. They've weighed very heavily, but I of course wouldn't trade any of it for anything in the world. And the most impressive number we have is 4506. It's the largest number I'm going to show. and it is the number of commits that have gone into core since we forked Spree. In the last 3 and whatever years of development, we've had 4,506 artisanal, handcrafted, bit-twiddled, green test-suited commits running through this thing. And the impact each and every one of those have had on the code base is remarkable. The progress we've made, the features we've added, the entire areas of the world we're able to support now because of those commits is really fantastic, and they are my favorite numbers from this. But there's also a important side to all of these things, all of the hand patty, yay, clappy numbers, is e-commerce is evolving. We keep seeing stores become more and more successful. We keep seeing the e-commerce field become more mature. People expect different things than they used to. People are working differently. And I want to make sure we never lose sight of where we need to go, because where our field is going. Each of these bullet points could be a talk in and of itself. They're all incredibly important, and if anyone wanted to sit down and hash out what our strategies could be for them, I'm incredibly happy to do it. Omnichannel is a amorphous word, just saying that e-commerce is no longer just a website and a cart anymore. We expect people to be selling items as they grow through other distributors, through brick and mortars, through pop-up shops, through whatever deals, bamboozles, whatever it is that you want to ship your products through. We need to understand that Solidus has to fit into a larger, broader ecosystem. And if we can't achieve this as a platform, and if we can't play nicely with all the tools and sales channels people want to use, we're not going to be a good solution for the biggest, most impressive, and most important stores. I love this one because I said it last year, and I keep seeing the same trends go up. Europe is awesome for e-commerce these days for me. I am able to ship to it easier than ever before. I'm able to watch the conversion rates I expect from the rest of the world. I'm able, and I guess the UK has always been excellent, but I think maybe more mainland Europe as well. And I don't expect these trends to change. I expect years, within the next 3, 4, 5 years, e-commerce in Europe to look no different than e-commerce in the States does. And we need to keep looking forward. What's next? If Europe looks like the States does 2, 3, 4 years from now, are we going to start shipping to Japan nicer, easier, better? Is it going to be Korea, chunks of Asia? Probably not Australia, sorry radar. But it's going to be somewhere, and we need to be on top of that. Payments don't look like they don't look like they used to. We can take a look at the payment innovations. We can take a look at the W3C payment and browser spec. We can look at what Apple Pay is pushing. We can look at how credit-based billing is becoming such an important part of e-commerce for conversion rates. And we need to support these awesomely, not just kind of well. We need to do this fantastically. It's some of the most important aspects of sites for people, and we historically have been really tied to some Spree payment models and need to push these forward. There's going to be a talk, I believe, tomorrow from one of the Bitspire folk about how they implemented one of these more modern, more fancy, really futuresque payment gateways, and I'm very much looking forward to that one. This is, for me, probably the biggest one, and it's shipping. As your stores get large, as your clients get larger, how shipping is customized, how you want to push your goods through the world changed so much. 3 years ago, we had somebody try to explain to me how important accurate shipping dates were. We had somebody try to explain to me how important it was to know exactly where something's shipping, when it's shipping to, what kind of, how much space is it going to take. And the shipment system in Solidus is some of the most hacked up and most reviled code in our database, or sorry, in our system. Alex from Lost My Name is going to be giving a talk today. Next, and that talk should be awesome because they've struggled with the shipment system so much, and it's been one of the biggest problems they had. We've ripped it almost entirely out of some of our systems. We've seen people replace it from the side. We've seen people hack it up internally. And if we're not better able to modify how and customize shipping for these stores, it's not going to be a successful platform for them. And this is cool. These are all what I consider success problems. As our stores have gotten so large, as they do such crazy and amazing things, they run into these barriers that we have inside of Solidus, and it's all of them individually are solvable problems. Part of this quote-unquote state of Solidus talk is I really want people to understand how much trouble people are having with these systems, so we're more vocal about being able to, how we can fix them, more vocal about the importance of them. The big evolution for STEMbolt and myself over the last year has been STEMbolt Europe. In order to better understand these things we talked about, in order to better understand weird German payment gateways, European shipping and taxes, we brought on board Martin and Tomas, who are in the back waving, onto the team. And so we started an office now based out of Berlin in order so we can better satisfy, better understand, and better deal with these futures of e-commerce. Generally, it's been incredibly successful. The humor is the funniest one because the Canadian sense of humor and the German sense of humor are oftentimes, the words are the same, but the tones are very different. So if it doesn't land the first time, you just repeat it with a different tone. There was a problem with us doing this, and a pretty visible one that we didn't talk a lot about as a community, and that was these were the two people outside of Jordan from Lost My Name who had the quote-unquote core spots for Solidus. When we brought them on board, we knew how unfortunate it was that STEMbolt was acquiring more of like the core leadership of Solidus and the core people. And it's not something we've talked about super publicly yet. We've in fact only really announced we were doing the office last week, almost on the down low. But it's a big problem in the community. We should never control as much of those people as we do now. We shouldn't strive to try to take all of them into STEMbolt. We should really be striving to add more opinions, different experiences, different levels of technology to the core, which brings me to maybe the happiest slide for this, which is we're adding a new core member. Woo! Alberto is sitting over there. He is smiling and should be waving. He has been in the Spree and Solidus ecosystem for, I think, as long as I have, if not longer, watching the quality of the work they do, not just him, all of Nebulab, watching the quality of work they do, watching the good feedback they're able to give to pull requests, watching the experiences they have with the stores they run is absolutely invaluable. We're super happy to have them on board, with the same everything that we have. I look forward to bringing him into the first core meetings. This hopefully doesn't stop with him. It's not like we don't add core members because we don't want people playing in our sandbox. We love these people. Like these are truly talented individuals that add so much to the community and to Solidus. So please, if you have desires to eventually get to that place where they did now, maybe let me know in private. I'll talk to you about the types of things we expect, the types of what we look for, the kind of effort we want from people, and hopefully, by the time I'm sitting down next year or whoever gives this open keynote, they're able to announce more people. The extension ecosystem is awesome. Maybe the greatest success of Solidus from the fork of Spree to where we are now is how much more reasonable it is to upgrade the stores, and lots of that isn't due to core, it's due to how we've treated extensions. I showed a slide last year of extensions.solidus.io, which is a site that Hawthorne built to continually run the test cases on every extension against every version of Solidus. And we're now at that point where my eyes aren't great, but I can't read that. I hope by the time we're here next year, it's going to be twice the size. This also isn't just extensions that we've gone around asking to add to this site. These are other companies have reached out to us and said, hey, Clarke, we really want to support our extension. We want it to have visibility in the community. We're standing behind the fact that it's going to be mostly green, and I'm sure all of these reds are just temporary. Every now and then the stars align and they're all green. But the greatest impact I've seen from other agencies and other people aren't always inside of core. Lots of times it's in building these extensions. And if you have one that you'd like published onto here, this is probably the most visible way to get other people looking at your extension. Shoot either myself or John Hawthorne, probably Hawthorne, I'm just going to shoot him the same message later, and ask him like, hey, can I get this added to the list? Some of my favorite extensions come from new STEMBolt employees because I've realized one of the best early tasks I can give to a programmer is have him rip out chunks of Solidus. There is so much technical debt, there are so many models that don't get used, there's so many features and functions that don't get used, that we've been pulling out chunks of core functionality. You'll notice the +8, -290 commit that removed the trackers from Solidus. Mike did this one for me, and he let me know yesterday that 500 people had downloaded that extension and got it running inside of their Solidus store. If that's anyone in this room, please come talk to me later. You should not be using this extension. You should probably not be using this functionality. That's not a dig on Mike, but generally when we pull these things out, there are such better solutions for how to achieve the same functionality. We pull them out for compatibility, for ease of upgrading, but that doesn't mean they're always a good idea to use. This is an important part to any project, any company, any community, any software system. Is how do we onboard new people? How are we doing it? How can we get better at it? Where are we succeeding? I get this question all the time, which is, how do we succeed with Solidus? And these are people that will ask me because they're interested in the platform. It's people that ask me because they see, well, you know, STEMBolt seems to have done it okay. And I just give them the easy steps. And the first one is you got to have a good business plan. If you're not approaching Solidus for a reasonable reason, if you don't have a plan on why you're using it, how you're going to make the nuts and bolts of it work, you're not going to succeed with it. Then you have to understand you're now a tech company. When you have a Solidus store running and you have your databases and your Elastic searches and your dev cycles and a bunch of people writing code for you, you are now a tech company. If you knew you were a tech company going in, no problem, not a big step. Then you probably want about 40 years of combined Rails experience. This would be almost minimum. If you had 4 people with 10 years each, you'll probably be okay. Because we both rely on all of Rails and are built on top of all of Rails, and the amount of Rails-isms that we use inside the code base is quite large. Then I recommend you employ 5/7 of the core team, because that seems to be really successful for us. By this point, hopefully most people know I'm joking. And then you should probably have already made every e-commerce mistake. If there's any mistakes you haven't made, go make those first, and then come back and expect to be successful with Solidus. This, of course, is not a reasonable onboarding path for new Solidus stores, new Solidus developers, but it's also pretty much what we have today. Quite often, people come into the Solidus Slack, we're at that 1,000 people. I'd say every one of the 1,000 have at one time asked me, where are the guides? Why don't we have guides? And I have been using this line for almost 3 years now, which is we'll create guides when we get a new version of the API. That's not really flying anymore. We're 3 years into this. That is not successful for us as a project. It makes us look not like the platform we are. When we say things like, when I say things like this, when I ignore the importance of onboarding, I know we've been hurting the Solidus ecosystem. So what I will say is, in order to ease onboarding and lower the complexity of starting with Solidus, Stembolt is going to create a new set of Solidus guides. First, I'm for sure never going to regret saying that. We are in talks with a few people that are technical writers. If anyone had a shining recommendation of somebody, I would be very open to talking to them too. Oh, radar? Yeah. Do you know what he would charge me in order to go back into this ecosystem? So yeah, this is something I'm actually putting my name to. It's really important for us. It's really important for us as a project. And by the next time, probably any of you see me, we will have a guides presence up. We will have the onboarding process really looked at. And I am putting my name to that. This is an intermission. This intermission is not for any of you. This one's for me. I'm not used to giving talks like this. There's been no code samples. There's been no descriptions of how we wrote a bunch of things. This is almost a business-ish talk at this point, and it's only going to get worse from here. And I grew up with this quote. We have a saying in the movement that we don't trust anybody over 30. And that was really funny for me until I turned 31 this year. And I'm now afraid that I am sitting on the other side. I've been in so many talks with so many business people talking about where they're going, how they're doing, projections, things and stuff. And I've always heckled it, I've laughed at it. I've never really trusted their motivations. I've never really thought their plans were any good. And I'm now on the flip side of this. So these last slides are along the same veins of where we're going as a platform and the kinds of things we need to do. But please keep in mind, it's through the lens of a programmer that doesn't really want to be up here. But I do understand how important they are. So we're gonna push through them. The ecosystem, Solidus is an ecosystem. We talked about a lot of the successes we had. We talked about a lot of the great numbers we see, the great people we get to hang out with. But we know as an ecosystem, we need to be multiple times bigger, better, fancier, prettier than we are now. And we're going to start with a rebrand. We're not going to rename it Solidus, I still enjoy as a name, but we need it to look like a platform for 2017. If you go to solidus.io, it looks like the site we spent a weekend throwing up and leaving on the internet, because that's what we did. I've hired a content strategy marketing person. I survived as a business for 10 years without one of these people. But I know we need one in order to execute on this well. So Stembolt has a human being who is going to be responsible for making Solidus look good. Luckily for me, we found somebody excellent. So I expect to see like solid movements on those fronts within the next few weeks, months. We've been engaging design firms to help us on all the branding side of things. We really want this to be centered around the successes Solidus has and the successes we have as a community. So I am talking about this now, warning you that I might be asking you guys questions. I might be seeing who's capable or comfortable sharing what. But you know, we want this to be the central hub for anyone that goes to Solidus and realizes what we've achieved here. And I want to show off. I swear this is I can't say these words out loud. But I want people to come to, I wrote this, I can't believe that. I want people to come to the Solidus website and realize how amazing of the product we built is. How much of like internet commerce it drives. I want people to come to it and be confident that if they pick Solidus, they're going to use success. And then the evolution of where we are as a platform needs to start increasing. We were really great with maintaining, improving, fixing, stabilizing what we had with Spree. We've solved a lot of the community problems, but we have to start being more experimenty. We have to start innovating again. We have to start pushing these forward. And I can tell you at Stembolt we have some plans in some directions, but I also encourage everyone If anyone has some crazy thing they want to try, shoot me a message. Maybe we can collaborate. Maybe we can figure out a way to make it work. Maybe we can share resources, share knowledge, share understanding. Because we're at that point where we need to start pushing the platform leaps and bounds forward. This is I can't say the word mission statement because I'm not that person. But if I had a mission statement, this is what it would be. I want no agency or store to ever worry about outgrowing Solidus. And this is a serious concern I assume most of the room has. I mean, heck, we have this concern. I never want Solidus to be the thing holding your store back. I never want it to be the thing not pushing your business forward. And all the decisions we make, all of the resources we invest are going to be centered around this, ensuring that we don't have to re-platform for the next 10, 15, 20 years. We want people to know Solidus is going to be there for them. And that comes from this. Not from this, but they kind of go hand in hand. We were passive with Solidus. We forked it without telling anyone. We had our first SolidusConf that was secret that no one was invited to. We don't market our successes. We don't talk about what's happening. We don't really do much to appear to be the platform we actually are. And that has to change. We need to start pushing Solidus as a platform, as a brand, as all those things, just to ensure that we're going to have the momentum, the people, the strength behind it moving forward. This is something that I get asked from like big weird companies that talk to me. I'm sure I have more people contacting me about Solidus than most. And this is a really common, frequent question I get is there official Solidus support? It's like, well, yeah, you just sign me up and I'll make sure you're supported in Solidus. But we need to figure out how to make this an actual C-level person browsing the site is going to say, hey, yes, this is a platform, there are people behind it, there are, the commitments there, and we're going to have to find a way to make that work with a open source platform. This, for some people in the room, might be the most important thing, and I wasn't even aware this was a discussion until a few months ago. Spree had the partner program, and when that dried up, huge chunks of people's incoming streams disappeared with it. It was a project, there was a program that Stembolt did not take, did not participate in, so I didn't really realize how important it was to so many other agencies. But we need to figure out how to show everyone what all the options are and show there's a ton of support behind the platform and give people a bunch of options. How exactly this is going to look is up for debate, and hopefully somebody sits me down sometime tonight during the next few days so we can talk about the goals they would have with a program like this, and we could talk about the goals we would have with it. Again, like weird business things, but also incredibly important to the health and stability of the platform. So in summary, we're pretty good. We're actually doing really well. We have phenomenally talented developers that are passionate about their stores, that are passionate about e-commerce. We succeeded at what we tried to do. We have a roughly 100% success with the goals we set out to achieve. And that is absolutely nothing to be sneezed at. I'm afraid that we're too focused on our goals from 3 years ago, and my personal push will be for where we're going with the future, and I want to make sure Solidus is among the first to be there. And we have to make this an easier platform to adopt. We need the friction to starting a Solidus store to go way lower, not even for people that aren't super experienced with it, but for generally everyone. So thank you very much. I was Clarke. I'm always happy to chat. You just have to shoot me an email and ask for a Google Hangout link. I will be around for the next 2 days, specifically and mostly at the pub for the beer night. If there's anything you want to talk about, if there's any concerns you have, if there's any like plans or weird things, I might be able to match you up with somebody that has the same concerns or able to split some resources. But thank you very much, and I hope everyone enjoys your next 2 days of SolidusConf and London in general. Cool.